Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode two of our ongoing podcast initiative. My name is Michael Brock. I'm a product manager and education lead at PrecisionOS. Danny, introductions.
Thanks, Mike. Danny Goyle, CEO of PrecisionOS, as well as an orthopedic surgeon in Vancouver, Canada.
And today we are excited to talk about implementation. There's a lot of issues that come with implementing new curriculum, especially in complex residency programs. We want to talk about some of the pros and cons to different initiatives, as well as what we've seen be successful. But I think what I want to really lead off this conversation with is the idea of not letting perfect be the enemy of good. I
Hmm.
think simulation, training, everything in between only benefits the resident. And the more reps and experiences they can get across a wide variety of mediums is going to be beneficial. And searching for that perfect solution wastes time ultimately that could be better spent iterating with a solution that suits the needs of the residents.
Right. Yeah, it's a great point. I like that quote, Mike, because we use that a lot in surgery, that perfect is the enemy of good. And you could spend a lot of time reducing or at least getting the perfect reduction or the perfect position of the implant, which may not make a difference to the ultimate outcome for the patient. And in this case, the enemy of good and looking for the perfect simulator is looking for that all-encompassing absolute replica of the real world. And one of the things that I talk about when I talk to some of my colleagues who are program directors is they will never be the exact replica of the operating room. And if technology certainly allows us to get there, it'll be so unaffordable that no one will buy it. So the concept of having different tools to your disposal and practicing, reading, watching videos, Sawbones, the physical simulators in VR, it's just another tool in your toolkit to get the practice you need before you go to the OR.
Couldn't agree more. I mean,
Yeah,
a personal story as I'm developing this stuff in VR, I'm getting the visual spatial training around understanding how to interpret C-arm images and taking those lateral images using live fluoro throughout my sort of practice within the application within Fracture Lab. And it's all making sense to me and resonating. And I've never used a C-arm on a real live human being, given that I develop VR apps. This is my experience. And now I can definitively say I know how to move with purpose and interpret imaging.
so Mike, I mean, you're not an orthopedic surgeon. Um, so maybe dig into that some more for me. So what do you mean when you say that? So you use the C arm in the virtual environment, and what were you struggling with? And
Sure.
then what did you end up learning from being able to, perform in this space?
Yeah. So while I'm trying to let's use a needle, for example. While I'm trying
Sure.
to put a spinal needle into a joint space. I know I have an AP image and I understand instinctively what that is showing me in whatever
Sure.
context I'm using it in. But then I start looking at a lateral image and I start to lose my bearings around
Mm,
what I'm actually seeing on X-ray, how it relates to
right.
the patient, because it's sort of a flipped perspective.
Sure.
I think the thing that really changed it for me is being able to practice with live fluoro in a
Yeah.
virtual environment
Sure.
because I can see one to one while I'm moving my hand, what's happening to the end of that instrument, and then
Right.
comparing it back between lateral and AP, and I can take images instantly between the two, right? Because it's a virtual camera. I can see what's
Right.
happening on that lateral image in an instant. And so I know instinctively the AP is not changing while I'm moving vertically in an example of
Yeah.
a supine patient.
Yeah.
But it's hard for me to connect those dots if I just have one image that's being shot for me. If it's AP and then a couple seconds later, after the C arm has been adjusted into the lateral position, taking that image
Right.
again, I may have lost my bearings and it's the learning is lost. So it's that sort of immediate feedback in
And
the virtual
interesting.
setting that really made me conceptualize and understand.
Yeah, it's one thing we don't talk much about is how to interpret images and connect the dots between what you see on 2D fluoro and then what you have in front of you, which is a 3D patient. There was an interesting study done by one of my colleagues out of Calgary, Dr. Prism Schneider. She looked at the amount of radiation exposure from different years of residency, and it was a really interesting paper. What she found was that early in your career, when you're PGY 1, 2, and 3, you get, a decent amount of radiation exposure. She's a trauma surgeon, so she was looking at that. But what she saw in the PGY5s was a significantly elevated amount of radiation exposure.
Yeah.
And the interpretation there is you're sort of learning along the way PGY 1, 2, 3, 4. But when you get to your independent time in your residency, PGY 5, where you're sort of on your own doing the case by yourself, there's still a disconnect between that spatial intelligence, which means they're taking more images because they're not sure. And we could interpret this in many different ways, but it was a really interesting study showing if you can teach people how to do this in the operating room, which is not ideal. But if you don't have another resource to teach what you just learned, then when you get out into practice, you're actually using probably radiation more to the detriment of yourself as well as your team.
Yeah. So to me, it sort of boils back to the idea of getting the opportunity to do basic skills training.
All right.
I know there's lots of sort of tactile physical trainers you can use in a real world setting
Sure.
to learn these basic skills, but boiling it down to implementing at the level of learning a single skill within a virtual setting that you can't really learn in a real world setting without risk. So that's
Yeah.
that's really where I see. So
Yeah.
that's a huge benefit of implementing this sort of strategy of skills based training in a virtual environment.
I'll share a personal story for myself. So when I was a resident in Calgary, I really wanted to operate with my attending because I really enjoyed shoulder surgery. And I wanted to, impress my staff. And one of the things that my wife bought me was a little cork board. So I picked up a suture, a knot pusher, some suture and needle driver from the hospital. And I can tell you, I practiced thousands and thousands of knot tying because I knew that if I was given the chance in EOR to tie a knot, I wanted to make it work. And the only way to get that practice is to practice in a safe environment. Now, I guess VR sort of offers that to some extent, but there's certain things we shouldn't do in VR. I would never want to teach somebody how to suture in VR because I think there's a much more cost-effective way to do that, as exemplified by what I just shared with you.
Yep.
But those are the things that I wanted to do when I was at home, but I didn't want to have to go back somewhere to go do them. So that was convenient for me. So a really good, at least a personal story about how that made me improve my skill set.
I think that makes a ton of sense. And
Yeah,
realistically, the point that you sort of ended on with the fact that you could practice this at your own time at home,
yeah,
I think that's another absolute win for
yeah,
simulation. Being able to do things that doesn't revolve around you walking to the dusty, dark corridor of the simulation lab at a hospital
yeah,
center or institution. Like
yes,
that's another absolute benefit of being able to train on your own time.
yeah.
Everyone's looking for that work-life balance these days. Being able to do stuff at home is awesome.
It's really great. I agree with that. And one of the things we've seen that hasn't worked with some of the programs that have tried implementing VR is if they keep the headsets in the hospital.
Yeah.
And the residents are so busy, there's a service component and they have to see patients in the ER or on the ward or they're in the OR. There's just no time to practice during the day. So that's one of the beauties of this new form of education is it's as accessible as a video or a textbook
Yeah.
because you can do it when and where you want to.
Yeah.
So
And
really good point, Mike.
even doing prep the night before, right?
Yep,
Being able to
100%.
hop in and see something in
Yeah,
3D, a structure, anatomy,
yeah.
understanding better mechanics around physiology and how motion of a joint works. I mean, you're not going to be able to replicate that without a crazy real world simulator that doesn't exist right now, that isn't
It's
affordable if it does. So,
and it gives people confidence. I mean, it's sort of like shooting free throws before a game or, shooting a couple of pucks at the net before you line up for the face-off. There was a study done by Iofi Feely out of Ireland that studied this exact topic. She had a really nice, elegant paper looking at confidence for residents from PGY 1 through 5. And what she did is she took all those residents and had them do 5 minutes of prep of VR before the case. And she assessed their confidence at that for each of those cases. And what she did, which was a nice addition, was she increased the complexity of the cases over time. So, for example, the first year resident would do a a simple procedure, prepare for it, do a simple procedure with their attending, and the same PGY1 at a later date would prepare, but then do a much more complex procedure at a later date. And what she found was the confidence level was the same regardless of the year of training if you trained before or prepared. And she referred to it as priming before the OR. And that's something that I think every attending wants too when they have a resident in the OR is, do they come there confident? Can I trust them with the instruments? And have they prepared enough to feel confident that I can trust them with the instruments?
Yeah. Now that brings up another thought, and I have a question for you.
Sure.
That attending or the program director, senior resident, et cetera, I mean, how much influence do they have on a younger trainee in terms of trying to get them to actually put in the reps and put in some time in a skills training perspective of simulation?
I think it's a really big and important point you're making there, Mike, because we dictate what the resident will do in the operating room. So if we have some expectation about what a resident will do before they come to the OR, I think that sets the standard for them. And not only that, but it actually prepares them for a career of lifelong learning. What should I do before I go to the my OR if I'm an attending when I prepare for a case? And I'll tell you two separate things. So when I'm operating, the night before, even though I've been in practice for 15 years, I still prepare for surgery. I still do. And and that may sound a little strange because, people think as you get more experience, maybe you don't need to practice or think about surgery, but every night before I still think and prepare for my procedures. Now, when you talk about attendings and their influence on residents, Dr. Barry McDonough, who's the program director at West Virginia University, did a really nice case study where he told his residents, you must do 5 to 10 minutes of arthroscopy in VR before you come to my OR. And what he noted was actually really compelling. So what he found was that he was letting his junior residents do more in the operating room than he'd noticed before. And again, it's just his subjective feeling. He didn't feel frustrated because he was now teaching beyond the basics because the residents came in with the basic skills. And the one thing we all worry about when we're in the operating room is we're against the clock. So we're competing with time. We have to get our cases done, or one or more, sadly, may get canceled if we go above the allocated time. He noted no change in the efficiency of his OR. So just to summarize my 2 points, one is I think as attendings, we have a big role to play in how our trainees prepare for the OR. And I think at least for me, I try to be that person, that same person that I was as a resident, preparing then and preparing now.
So I think you made one point that I really want to highlight from that, which ties this up full circle,
Mm,
not letting perfect be the enemy of good.
yeah.
5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
almost nothing. Like
Yeah.
just put on the headset,
Yeah.
watch video, review some literature. Five
Yeah.
to 10 minutes is honestly, you could do that on the walk probably to the
Yeah.
hospital or on
Yeah.
transit while you're on your way. Like
Yeah.
it's not asking a lot. And I think that's the key here. Implementation doesn't need to be a complete upending of a system. It can be
Yeah.
something simple and basic and start small
That's right.
before benefit is realized and maybe you want to implement in a greater way.
Well, and one of the things that we haven't talked about much, but the literature certainly has evidences quite well and quite often, because you're in this virtual environment, you're non-distracted. So there's this concept of deep learning, which is if you can actually get more done if you're focused and doing a single task. Every study that's been done on VR has shown that you actually learn more in less time. So when we talk about work-life balance, I would pay um, a lot of money, and probably twice on Sundays or 2 times the amount on Sundays, if I could do more in less time. And I think that's where AI comes into play. And of course, VR is a very compelling argument for that, but that's a really powerful, supportive argument for a work-life balance is doing more in less time.
I think that honestly, that sentiment wraps us up really nicely in terms of what we wanted to talk about today. But in order to give everyone a reason to come back, let's give them a preview. What do you want to talk about next time, Danny?
Great question, Mike. One of the things I really want to discuss with you is the importance of anatomy education. So now we're going into or beyond, I would say, the surgical realm. If you're a physiotherapist, if you're a nurse, scrub tech, medical student, doesn't matter. If you're in healthcare, your foundational anatomy and understanding of it is so important. And I
Absolutely.
think and I think that's what I'd love to dig into with you, Mike, on the next podcast.
Let's do it. I'm looking forward.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks everyone for listening and watching. Till next time.
Bye bye.